headliner. I'm a headliner.
Yo, what is going on, guys? Dr. Ethan Turner here with the Fantasy Headliners, and it's time for a Week 15 injury update show. You guys know the drill. Every single week, I go through the whole NFL slate so you don't have to, and tell you about all the injuries that you guys need to know about for your fantasy teams. As always, this show is brought to you by our boys over at Fantrax. Make sure that you download the Fantrax app. Let them know that the Headliners sent you, but let's get into it. A special playoffs? We're talking about playoffs? Playoff edition of the Injury Update Show. All right, guys, we're going to start out with our moment of silence. A lot of moment of silences as we get to the end of the season. Just means that a guy's fantasy season is over. But for quarterback Kyler Murray, his entire season is over. Tore his ACL, biggest injury of the week, possibly of the NFL season. We're going to have a lot of conversations about this in the offseason. If you'd like me to break this down in the offseason in a video by itself, let me know in the comments down below. I'm looking for some stuff that I can do for Headliner Nation in the offseason, and I think that maybe some injury breakdowns where I can go into more detail, a little bit more in depth on what these injuries mean for specific players. I'd like to do something like that this offseason with a variety of these big injuries. If that sounds like something you're interested in, let me know in the comments down below. But Kyler Murray done for the year, ACL tear. Wide receiver Rondale Moore was placed on IR with his groin strain. He's done for the season. Wide receiver Cooper Kupp with the high ankle sprain already on IR, already had surgery. Sean McVay finally confirmed what I've been speculating since this injury, and that the team does not expect Cooper Kupp to come back this season. So Cooper Kupp most likely done for the fantasy season. Quarterback Marcus Mariota dealing with that knee sprain. He's been placed on IR. Desmond Ridder going to get a chance to show what he has, to see if the Falcons maybe need to use a pick on a quarterback next season. We'll see what happens with Desmond Ridder. Running back Mike Boone was placed on IR with a high ankle sprain. Running back Mark Ingram placed on IR with an MCL tear. So both those running backs done for the year as well. There's some speculation that Mark Ingram may be done for his career. So hopefully not, but wishing him the best on his recovery. Moving on to Dallas, they lost two big guys on the line. We got right tackle Terrence Steele and defensive tackle Jonathan Hankins. Both those guys done for the year. Hankins tore his pec and Steele tore his ACL. Speaking of ACLs, the Steelers defensive end Chris Wormley also tore his, so he's done for the year. And then finally, we've got two linebackers that were placed on IR, Jayon Brown from the Raiders and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah for the Browns, both done for the final month of the season. So make sure we pour some emojis, pour one out emojis in the chat for these guys. Appreciate what they did for our fantasy teams this year. All right, guys, let's do my accuracy recap. Every single week, I try to be accountable to you guys, let you know that I'm going back. I'm trying to see where I missed, where I hit. Last week, 95% on my in-out calls last week, and 88% on the year. So pretty solid week last week, trying to get that number up to 90 for the year. As far as misses goes, one of the guys I was surprised about being out, T. Higgins, Kadarius Toney, thought those guys were going to be ready. T. Higgins re-injured his hamstring in pregame warmups. I'll go into that a little bit later. That one kind of ticks me off, but I'm not gonna spoil the rant for right now. I'm gonna talk about him a little bit later. But my prize pick play of the week, missed it by one catch. Had AJ Brown over 5 catches. He had a good game, 15 half PPR points, but only caught 4 passes. The teams absolutely rolled the Giants and did not need to pass as much as I'd hoped they would. I did tell you guys to wait and see on J.K. Dobbins. I was dead wrong on that. Dobbins had a great game. Credit is where it's due. Did you notice his running form, though? Did not look super smooth, but of course he was just absolutely torching my Steelers, so maybe I'm just a little bitter about that. He has got some speed, but did you see the photo of his knee? Hey, Taylor, throw up the photo of J.K. Dobbins' knee. Looks like an alien trying to bust out of that knee, okay? I'll take the miss on week 14, but I'm concerned about how that knee holds up going forward this season. Moving on to some hits, I had the Bengals using both running backs last week. They did. Mixon came back, RB17. P-Ryan was the RB22, so I think they kind of steal away from each other. I don't expect a big game from either guy when they're both playing. Lions cornerbacks having a bad time against Justin Jefferson. I didn't expect him to have a record game against the Lions, but he did finish with 223 yards, a new franchise record for a single game receiving yards total. So huge game for Justin Jefferson, but no touchdowns, which was kind of disappointing. I said that there'd be a rough week for the Bucs running backs. White finishes the RB25, Fournette is the RB28, both under 9.5 PPR points. Told you guys to start Mike Williams if you needed a boom week, and he gave it to you coming off that high ankle sprain. Week 4 on the weekend, half PPR. Just a huge monster game from Mike Williams, his first week back. I told you guys if you absolutely needed a win, go ahead and start Mike Williams. He delivered for us. And then I did say to start Hunter Henry, finishes the tight end 10, only 8.5 half PPR points, but almost a full 3 points ahead of the tight end 11. So he was kind of the cliff for the good but not great tight end ones this week. All right, let's get into the games. We've got a few guys to talk about on Thursday Night Football. Wide receiver Deebo Samuel, knee and ankle sprains. Kyle Shanahan gave him about a 3-week timeline to return, so it doesn't look like he's going to be much use in the fantasy playoffs. Quarterback Brock Purdy had rib and oblique injuries, but managed to play last night. They didn't ask him to do a whole lot, but it was good to see that he is healthy enough to play. And then Seahawks running back Kenneth Walker had an okay night, not as great as some people maybe expected, but he is back from his ankle sprain, has a pretty tough playoff schedule, Chiefs and Jets coming up. So we're hoping that Kenneth Walker can kind of turn it around after this week. We got 3 games on Saturday this week, so keep an eye on that. Make sure you're setting your lineups a little early this week. These 3 Saturday games will throw you off. I know that Saturday is going to be a big time for Christmas parties, but don't forget we do have football to watch as well, so let's keep our priorities straight, shall we? Colts at the Vikings. Colts only dealing with cornerback Kenny Moore. He's got the ankle sprain, has already been ruled out. A good sign for Justin Jefferson, and the Vikings are pretty healthy. So a lot of people thought they were pretenders, but they're one of the healthier teams in the league. They keep winning. So let's see what happens with the Vikings once they get into the playoffs. Moving on to the Browns and the Ravens. Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson's got that PCL sprain, already been ruled out for this week, but luckily for the Ravens, their backup quarterback Tyler Huntley with his concussion has been cleared and is expected to play this week. As for the Browns, only really watching wide receiver Amari Cooper. He's dealing with a hip injury. Did manage to play on Sunday, but still has not quite found his rhythm with quarterback Deshaun Watson. He said he expects to play this week. I'm hoping that those two can put something together from a fantasy perspective. We want to see that offense moving again. I'm really kind of playing Cooper more as a wide receiver 3, hoping he has a big game. Want to see Nick Chubb getting a little bit more involved with Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson's supposed to be opening this offense up, but it seems like he is actually shutting it down right now. So hopefully Watson can continue to improve and bring the rest of this offense up with him. Moving on to possibly the best game of the week, we got Dolphins at the Bills. Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill dealing with an ankle sprain. Was a bit sore this week, limited in practice on Tuesday, but got back-to-back full practices. No game designation means I'm pretty much expecting him to not be limited at all by this. Go ahead and start up Tyreek Hill like you normally would. Wide receiver Jalen Waddle's dealing with a fibula injury. It's not listed on the injury report or on the practice report, but we've now put 4 straight games of underwhelming performances from Jalen Waddle. I don't know if this is the ankle issue that's bothering him or if it's just a bad string of matchups for him, but either way, Tua, Waddle not on the same page right now. So we got 4 weeks of bad Waddle play. I guess I'm just questioning playing him. I know that he's had kind of up and down season. He's had some really hot weeks and then he's kind of fallen off and then he's had hot weeks, but those have normally correlated with injuries. And it doesn't sound like he's actually hurt, or at least not hurt enough to be put on the practice report. Very concerning for Waddle. I'm probably finding somebody else to start if I can. If I can, I'm just throwing him in there, hoping he can find his mojo. Running back Jeff Wilson dealing with a hip injury, got carted off with this injury, but apparently his tests were negative. We don't have a whole lot as far as an actual diagnosis for this hip injury, but he is limited in practice on Thursday. Could be a good sign he could still play regardless. He came out and said the team's going to decide his fate on Saturday. So if you're gonna roll the dice with Jeff Wilson, good luck. I probably wouldn't. I'm probably sitting him for somebody else if I can this week. As for the Bills, couple guys that they're just, kind of keeping an eye on. We got nose tackle Jordan Phillips. He's got a shoulder sprain, landed hard on that shoulder 2 weeks ago, hasn't played since. He's already kind of been ruled out for this week. And then offensive guard Ryan Bates dealing with an ankle sprain, not expected to play this week, which could put some pressure on quarterback Josh Allen, who I think is going to be trying to maybe get some revenge on the Dolphins, who did beat them earlier in the season. All right, heading into the Sunday early slate, we got Falcons at the Saints. Falcons don't really have any major injuries outside of Mariota, who we already talked about in the moment of silence. Saints tight end Juwan Johnson dealing with that ankle injury. Missed week 13, but is practicing in a limited capacity after the bye. He's expected to play, but I still think Taysom Hill is probably the tight end that you want from the Saints. And then defensive end Cam Jordan has a midfoot sprain. He actually got fined for this injury, as the league kind of viewed it, the sudden onset of his symptoms, as him faking an injury. He's denied that he had this injury, that he was faking it basically. And did appeal this fine, but we have seen the last few weeks guys just kind of dropping on the defense to stop the flow of the game, to let substitutions come in. So I'm not surprised that the league is cracking down on this type of behavior. Jordan has been limited though with this foot sprain, but he does intend to play. Heading over to the Steelers at the Panthers. Steelers quarterback Kenny Pickett dealing with a concussion. Has been limited all week, but has not officially cleared concussion protocol yet. He's a game-time decision, but does look like he's on track to play. Running back Najee Harris dealing with hip and oblique injuries. Harris is kind of having an up and down year so far with all the injuries around the league. You may still find yourself playing him just for that touchdown upside, but he did practice in full on Thursday, shouldn't have any limitations on Sunday, so you can at least feel confident that he's somewhat healthy. But the limitation may be that he's starting quarterback Mitchell Trubisky. That could kill the whole offense, so we'll see what happens with that. As for wide receiver Deontay Johnson, he's been kind of in and out with this hip injury. Didn't practice Thursday, but it's been bothering him for most of the season now. He has yet to miss a game, though, so I don't expect him to sit this week. And then tight end Pat Freiermuth dealing with a foot injury. The Muth has not practiced yet this week, but reports from Thursday indicate he does expect to play. So foot injuries aren't typically something I mess around with, but because he sounds like he's pretty confident he's going to play, and this one sounds like a mild foot injury, and tight end is literally a planet of garbage on fire right now, if Freiermuth's playing, you're probably starting him. He's just one of those guys that's kind of locked in as a top 5 to 8 tight end, regardless of how healthy he is. As for the Panthers, they're only really worried about linebacker Brandon Smith. He's got an ankle sprain, but doesn't look like he is going to be able to play. Heading over to the Eagles at the Bears. Eagles are healthy and winning games. That seems to be a trend this year. The healthy teams seem to be winning quite a few games. Eagles no exception. Bears running back David Montgomery, though, is sick. Didn't practice on Thursday. We typically see players play despite illness, but because he isn't practicing and he is sick, we're going to say it's a game time decision. Khalil Herbert's kind of an interesting speculative ad if you really need help at running back, but the Eagles aren't exactly friendly to running backs, so I'm not going to blame anybody who just wants to leave Herbert on the bench and just hope that David Montgomery is starting. Wide receiver Chase Claypool's got a knee sprain, hasn't practiced this week, doesn't look like he is likely to play unless he sees some work on Friday. I don't really think that Claypool's worth playing anyway, but it does mean more to anybody that is planning on starting Justin Fields that Chase Claypool, man, I'm really struggling with words today. Chase Claypool is expected to miss this game. And then the Bears secondary is banged up, but getting healthier. Saquon Brisker and cornerback Kyler Murray, both working through concussion protocol, have been practicing in full. So good to see that the Bears secondary is getting a little bit healthier after missing those guys for a few weeks. Heading over to the Chiefs at the Texans. Chiefs wide receiver Kadarius Toney dealing with that hamstring strain. 3 straight missed games for Toney, but the good news is he is practicing in a limited capacity again this week. Burned me last week, but I'm going to double down, say that he is ready this week to return. Wide receiver Mecole Hardman, you may have forgotten about him because we haven't talked about him in a while, but he's been dealing with an oblique strain, has been on IR. The team doesn't have to say anything about him on the practice report. He is eligible to return, and there are some rumblings that it may be this week, but with the team kind of eyeing a championship run and still playing well, I think they'll probably hold off on Mecole Hardman. As for the Texans, they got all sorts of injuries on the offense. Running back Dameon Pierce, dealing with a high ankle sprain, is expected to miss some time with this injury. We don't know if that's a week, maybe 3 weeks. We don't really know. Dameon Pierce banged up. A real bummer because he has a pretty nice playoff schedule for running backs. Wide receiver Nico Collins dealing with a foot sprain, not practicing after missing last week. He's unlikely to play. Teammate wide receiver Brandon Cooks, dealing with a calf strain, had a really strange year. Trade requests, multiple soft tissue injuries. Some may have not really been injuries. We don't know for sure. He was limited on Thursday. Gives me some hope that he will still be at least a game time decision, but he might be able to play this week, but I'm probably not playing him in my fantasy lineups. Cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. dealing with that hamstring strain, not practicing. Doesn't seem like he's likely to return this week or maybe even for the rest of the season. And then cornerback Steven Nelson dealing with a foot sprain, also not likely to play. The Chiefs should have an absolute field day passing this week because the Texans are just banged up all over the place, but their cornerbacks are really struggling right now. Heading over the Cowboys at the Jaguars. Cowboys safety Jaron Curse, dealing with shoulder and back injuries, was a surprise scratch late last week, but appears to be practicing this week, does have intentions to play. And then tackle Tyron Smith, expected to come back this week and possibly start at right tackle. Remember, the Cowboys did lose starter Terrence Steele on Sunday with an ACL tear. As for the Jags, only quarterback Trevor Lawrence on the injury report that we're concerned about. He's got the ankle sprain /foot/toe/knee, possibly. Anyway, doesn't matter. He's still playing through this, but he's not practicing through it. Really showing why he was so highly regarded coming out of Clemson. He has absolutely been ripping defenses up the last few weeks. Just really impressive stuff from Trevor Lawrence. He's managing this injury, but I do expect him to still play. Heading over to the last game of the early Sunday slate, we got Lions at the Jets. Lions defensive end Aiden Hutchinson's dealing with illness. Hutch and two other defenders, Mike Hughes, cornerback, and defensive tackle Michael Brockers, all shown up as DNPs on Thursday with illness. Lions defense could be a little short-handed if this defense the sickness keeps spreading throughout the defense. Outside linebacker Derek Barnes, dealing with a knee injury, isn't expected to play this week either. Lions really kind of hurting all over the place. Wide receiver Corey Davis is dealing with a concussion, and so Corey Davis, that is, absolutely killed my week in Prize Picks last week. I thought he was going to have a big game, and then he left after being concussed on his first catch of the day. He's not practicing as of Thursday, looks unlikely to play. As for quarterback Mike White, he had a rib injury, took one of the hardest legal hits that I have seen this season. Actually, Taylor, go ahead and run the tape on that hit for me. Just an absolute look at this thing. Just bent him in half. I mean, literally just got smushed. All right. I think my ribs are bruised just watching him get hit like that. I have not seen someone take a beating like that since I beat up Tater Miles at Jake's house a few weeks back. That's how bad that Mike White got hit. All right, heading over to the midday slate, we got the Cardinals at the Broncos. Cards only dealing with wide receiver Marquise Brown. He's dealing with some illness. Was added on Thursday. Looks like he's now going to be a game time decision. I still expect him to play, but just kind of keep an eye on Marquise Brown. For the Broncos, we got wide receiver Cortland Sutton with that hamstring strain, still not practicing. Doesn't look like he's going to be able to play. Jerry Jeudy becomes an interesting start if quarterback Russell Wilson can clear concussion protocol. He did get some limited work on Thursday, still has to clear by Sunday. He's coming off his best game of the season. Hopefully he can play and kind of build on that, build some hope for the Broncos fan base that he isn't the worst contract in the NFL right now. So hoping Russell Wilson can come back and play well for our fantasy teams as well. Heading over to the Patriots at the Raiders. Patriots wide receiver Devontae Parker dealing with a concussion. He left the game and isn't exactly on track to play this week. Has not practiced yet. Doesn't look like he's coming back. Running back Ramondre Stevenson has an ankle sprain. Stevenson was in a prime spot Monday, but left with the ankle injury. Tried to return, but after a few plays, it was pretty clear he was favoring the ankle. So they pulled him. He's not practicing yet. Seems like a long shot to return in this game. Luckily for the team and for our fantasy players, running back Damien Harris dealing with that thigh contusion does look like he's on track to play. He's been limited this week, but rookie Pierre Strong played really well last week while Stevenson was out, and as did fellow rookie Kevin Harris. So I wouldn't actually be surprised if the Patriots decided to go with the two young guys, the two rookies, and sit Damien again this week as they kind of feel out what they have with those two guys. Damien Harris, not the future for the Patriots. And then wide receiver Jakobi Meyers missed Monday's game with a concussion, is back practicing. Hopefully we get official word today on if he has cleared concussion protocol. He's going to be a game time decision until that happens. As for the Raiders, running back Josh Jacobs dealing with quad and hand injuries, dislocated his pinky on Sunday, but managed to come back and play through after they relocated in the locker room because he is a warrior. He's been limited this week, but the test came back negative. He should be able to play, but I'm going to be kind of watching to see if he has any ball security issues with that hand. And if you're having some ball issues, maybe you should head on over to our friends at Manscaped. Use the code HEADLINERS, get 20% off and free shipping on your order. Get yourself something nice for Christmas over at our friends at Manscaped. Moving on to the Titans at the Chargers. Titans have 15 players on their injury report, but the only one I'm worried about right now is wide receiver Treylon Burks dealing with that concussion. A little concerning that he's still not practicing after missing last week with this concussion. He seems doubtful to play for Sunday. Again, disappointing just because when he's active, he's one of the more fun rookie wide receivers to watch, but sadly his injury history does date back to high school, and it's only continuing now in the NFL. Very concerning for him. Hope he can right the ship there. As for the Chargers, safety Derwin James dealing with a quadriceps strain. James still not practicing after missing last week. He is kind of the heart of the Chargers defense, so they're going to be hurting without him in the game. Doesn't look like he is ready to play. And then the offensive line, though, is getting a little bit healthier. Trey Pipkins, offensive tackle, and guard Zion Johnson, both trending towards playing. Pipkins has missed about a month with a knee injury, but a healthy O-line is a good thing for Austin Eckler. We'd like to see those rushing totals getting back up into the 80s and 80 to 100 range. It's been a while since we've seen him consistently getting there. Moving on to the Bengals at Tampa Bay. Bengals are banged up right now. Defensive end Trey Hendrickson broke his wrist, actually played the entire fourth quarter with this injury like an absolute man beast. Regardless, he's talked about playing with a club, but we haven't seen that yet. We'll see what happens, what they decide to do with this. I don't expect him to play this week, but if he does, just know he's going to be limited, not going to be able to use that hand. Tight end Hayden Hurst dealing with a calf strain, still not practicing, doesn't look like he's ready to return this week. Tyler Boyd dislocated his finger, and unlike Josh Jacobs, did not return. He's been practicing a limited capacity, game time decision, but trending towards coming back and playing this week. And now we got to talk about wide receiver T. Higgins. He's dealing with a hamstring strain that he showed up on the injury report with late last week on Thursday. And look, I know you guys appreciate the job that I'm doing here. I'm trying my best. I really do try my best to give you guys as much accurate info as I can at the time that I'm giving it, okay? I've done injury updates like this for 5 years now. So I have looked at a lot of injury reports. I've seen a lot of players be hurt and then not play. I've seen a lot of players be hurt and then play. I've seen a little bit of everything, but let me tell you, I have never seen what the Bengals did with T. Higgins. I've never seen this pulled off. I've never had this happen. And it's really frustrating because this is the type of thing that if it becomes a habit with teams, it can absolutely crumble the integrity that we have as fantasy players, but also as bettors. Anybody who's betting on games, this is the kind of stuff that absolutely ruins that portion of the game. And let me just explain what happened with T. Higgins, okay? No injury designation. So he gets injured on Thursday, right? He's got the hamstring strain. I tell you guys about it. Say I'm a little bit worried. We'll see what happens. Goes into Sunday, no injury designation at all. Tweaks his hamstring again during the pregame warmups. Now, normally we hear about this in the pregame warmups, we say, somebody reports, hey, he's re-aggravated his hamstring. We don't know what's going to happen. That gives us not a lot of time, but some time to make a change. And typically what happens is they pull them out of the starting lineup. So if we pull him out from the starting lineup, we know, hey, something's up with his hamstring. We need to be pulling him out of our lineups. Did the Bengals do that? No, they did not. They did not tell anybody that he tweaked his hamstring. And I get it's a competitive advantage. I'm not upset about that, but just know that it is a little frustrating when the team doesn't say anything about it and then trots Higgins out like he's going to play, and he does play one snap. Now, he has come out and said he snuck onto the field to play that one snap, but I'm not buying it, okay? Because technically he did start the game, and then he missed the entire rest of the game. So he was active. He played technically, but the team really is skirting the rules a little bit about reporting this. And maybe it did happen on the last play of the of the warm-up snaps. All I know is really frustrating for me, and really frustrating for really anybody that started T. Higgins last week, because we as fantasy players need accurate info coming out as soon as it can. And when teams do this type of thing where they kind of skirt the rules as far as reporting injuries, and then skirt the processes that we have in place to kind of keep everybody informed about what's happening, very, very frustrating. Okay, very frustrating for me. Hopefully you guys agree, but we have to move on. He is practicing in a limited capacity, and I'm going to say that he's a game-time decision, and you have to watch him like a hawk, because apparently we can't trust the Bengals anymore. As for the Bucs, wide receiver Julio Jones dealing with a knee injury, not practicing. Not really anybody expecting Julio Jones to play in any of these games anyway. You shouldn't be starting him in fantasy. Just know he's banged up. The defense for the Bucs is also hurting a little bit. Cornerback Jamal Dean has a toe injury, not expected to play this week. Linebacker Carl Nassib also has a pec strain, unlikely to play. Vita Vea has been playing through a calf injury, but has not been practicing every single week, so he's a game-time decision. Good news is that free safety Mike Edwards with his hamstring strain and cornerback Sean Murphy Bunting with his quadricep strain are both practicing in full and should be able to return this week. Oh, man. Heading into Sunday Night Football, we got the Giants at Washington for a rematch of the tie game from earlier this season, a few weeks ago, actually. Both these teams trying to win their division. Both of these teams are 7-5-1. So this is a big game. I'm not surprised they have it in Sunday Night Football, but it could also be a total dud. We'll see what happens from a just entertainment value standpoint. Giants are banged up. Running back Saquon Barkley dealing with a neck injury. Had arguably the worst game of his season, but still seems on pace to play this week. He's not even listed on the injury report. They said that there's no limitations for him. He's more of an RB2 for me, though, than an RB1. I just think something's up with Saquon. I don't know if it's just the fact that he's playing a full season this year or what, but he's starting to get a little banged up, not running the way he has. And it could be because his offensive line is still hurt. Shane Lemieux and then Joshua Azude. Both those guys remain out of practice, not likely to play. Defensive end Leonard Williams has a neck injury. He's back practicing, does look like he is on track to play, but cornerback Adoree Jackson with his knee sprain still not practicing. Don't expect him back this week. As for Washington, really worried about the running backs. Running back Antonio Gibson has a foot sprain. Brian Robinson Jr. has a quad strain. Both those guys are limited in practice this week. I expect both of them to play, with Robinson getting the majority of the work on the ground. Last game of the week. A lot of games this week. Monday Night Football, Rams at the Packers. I'm sure when they made the schedule for the NFL, they really were hoping that this would be like a very important game with two playoff teams, but it's just not turning out that way. The Rams, possibly the most injured team in the NFL right now, if not one of the most injured teams. Definitely the most star power injured right now, but defensive lineman Aaron Donald dealing with the ankle sprain, not officially shut down for the year yet, but was listed as a DNP. Sean McVay admits that he is not sure when Aaron Donald's going to be able to play again, so it doesn't look like it's going to be this week. And then the Packers, Aaron Jones dealing with an ankle sprain, arguably a top 10 fantasy running back every week he's healthy, but the team's been working A.J. Dillon a little bit more. I am worried about Jones's ankle. From an injury perspective, if he's healthy enough to play, I do think you have to still probably play him in fantasy, but I do worry about a huge bust game every time he gets hit, because he just seems like he's getting hit hard and leaving the game for, series after series after series. And then you look up and you're like, man, the guy missed half the game. He's really hurting my fantasy team, but still probably playing him if he's active, because he has one of the highest ceilings of any running back in the league. And then wide receiver Romeo Doubs, or Dubs, or Dobbs, however you want to say it, dealing with an ankle sprain, back practicing in full. But I think we all kind of agree that Christian Watson has ascended into the must-start wide receiver slot for the Packers. All right, guys, week 15 injury update show in the books. Let me know if there's anybody I missed in the comments down below. I'm going to try to get to as many of those comments as I can, help you guys winning fantasy playoff matchups this week and for the entire fantasy playoffs. I want to thank our sponsors, Manscaped, Fantrax, and Prize Picks. Make sure you're using the code Headliners when you head on over to those sites. But that's all I got for you guys this week. Injury update show in the books. The doc is out.